is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to back-to-back weeks, by the way, Penguin show of Around the 412. I'm Tyler, as Josh said. With me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412, whether that's over on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We're everywhere. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not already watching the shows over there. We've been getting some love over there recently, especially on our Steelers show. Want to see that love spread to our Penguins and our Pirates shows. But that helps if you guys go subscribe to the channel, like the videos, leave some comments on them, letting us know what you think. If you have any questions that you want us to answer on the show, leave some comments over on YouTube, and we will definitely get to those questions. But yeah, go check us out on YouTube. Give us some love over there. And also, while you're at it, give us some love over on Apple Podcast and Spotify and wherever you actually listen to the show if you don't watch the video. I feel like we always shout out YouTube, but we don't give enough love to the actual listening platforms as well. So go check us out there. Go follow us wherever you find this podcast, and then go give us some love. This is like I said in the beginning, this is the Penguins show, back-to-back weeks with the Penguins show, because we have back-to-back weeks with actual Penguins news, which is honestly a fun thing to have, because we do like to talk about the Penguins, despite what I've said over the past couple months, or hinted at, saying that I have no interest in talking about the Penguins because of just the way the season and the past two seasons have gone and have ended, and everything involving the team, basically. But we do love hockey. We do love the Penguins. So anytime we get to talk about them, we're going to. So we do have some news to talk about. We actually have a Wilkes-Barre Scranton coach hiring, which I questioned if we were going to have a Penguin show just about that, because I'm like, we don't know anything about this guy. And then we do have a goalie signing. Alex Nedeljkovic is back on a 2-year contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So yeah, we've got a little bit of stuff to talk about.
Also, get ready for 3 straight weeks, because I believe next week Josh Getzov, voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins and voice of our intro,
voice of the Around the 412 intro.
Yeah, we were joking around. It's funny because he brought it up, not me. So don't take this as me taking a dig at Josh. We were talking about how funny it was that he brought up Ryan Graves, and he said, hopefully, if I mention a free agent, they have a better first season in Pittsburgh than the last guy that I mentioned. So, he's the one that brought it up, not me. But yeah, Josh will be great to get back on here. So I'm excited about that. Kirk McDonald, the new head coach of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Not a name that I had seen mentioned necessarily. And we'll start there. Don't want to spend too much time on this conversation, but I just want to ask you, do you feel like this hire is somebody that puts any pressure at all on Mike Sullivan? Because some of the other guys that we had thought about were guys with NHL coaching experience. And we were like, oh man, if they bring in like a Sheldon Keefe or somebody like that to coach the Wilkes-Barre team, that might be putting a little bit of pressure on Sullivan. I don't get the sense that this is a hire that does that.
I think with the 2 hires that we have talked about over the last week and this week, with David Quinn being the new assistant coach on the team, and with Kirk McDonald being the new Wilkes-Barre Scranton coach, we talked about whenever it comes to Sullivan, what we're doing with the future. Should they hire people in those specific positions that are going to make the seat feel a little warmer for Mike Sullivan? And in my opinion, I don't think the Penguins did that at all with either of the hires. I don't think they did it with David Quinn, even though he does have prior head coaching experience. You've seen what that head coaching experience is like. I don't really think that Kyle Dubas hired David Quinn as a safety net for Mike Sullivan. And then the same thing with Kirk McDonald. I don't see this as a potential higher-up situation like you saw whenever Mike Sullivan got hired after Mike Johnston got fired. I don't see that situation happening. This guy has never even coached at the AHL level, let alone the NHL level. And when you look at where he has coached a few seasons in the USHL, several seasons in the ECHL. So he's spent pretty much all of his time in juniors, which juniors can be good leagues and good teams to coach. But I have a hard time believing that the Penguins are going to go into this seeing this guy as a realistic option if they were to move on from Mike Sullivan mid-season. I mean, the most realistic option is David Quinn, but like I said, if that is your real safety net as far as a backup plan for Mike Sullivan, if you do fire him mid-season, and I do mean that seriously, I feel like probably most people listening to that will hear that and think that that's not even in the realm of possibility going into the season, at least during the season. I think if the Penguins get to a point where you can see the Penguins have potential, but things aren't changing, then you have to bring that on the table, and that has to be an option. So if that option does arise, I don't think that they set themselves up for success as far as the successor goes. Like David Quinn might be fine as an interim head coach. I don't see him as a long-term option as head coach, and I don't see Kirk McDonald just because of his lack of experience. He might be a fine coach. He might be a really good coach. Honestly, I can't really say. Didn't really look into him all that much. I just know he coached in a few different leagues and juniors, but I don't see someone with that realm of experience being somebody that's going to be brought in as a safety net. So from what this hire and last week's hire says to me is that Mike Sullivan's job is relatively safe. Like, it's going to take a lot for the Penguins to actually bite the bullet and fire him because they don't have someone in on the bench waiting to come in for him like they had with Mike Sullivan and Mike Johnston.
I will say it's either that or they have much more faith in David Quinn than we do to be able to take over that job.
Which one's worse? Because
yeah,
when you look at the past couple seasons that he had with the Sharks, and granted, I said last week, and I don't want to give him necessarily all the benefit of the doubt, but like the Sharks was a terrible roster. I'm fully aware of that. Everybody's fully aware of that. But you look at what he did in San Jose. You look at what he did for a few years in New York. Pretty underwhelming head coaching stints by a head coach goes, which is why he's moved on from in both.
Far worse in New York, in my opinion.
Yeah, far worse in New York because you had the better roster and they just weren't able to get it done. Then that's why I said, like, I think maybe if that's going to be your interim head coach, if you do move on from Mike Sullivan, then whatever. He has head coaching experience. It might not be as bad as we make it because the Penguins have a better roster than the San Jose does, or at least I think they do. I don't know if they actually do. Let's be real. But I think that he would be better as an interim head coach. But once the season's over, if you do get to that point, I don't know that you hire this guy as your head coach. I think that the head coaching search is on for the Penguins if they get to that point. Now, there's a lot of things that happen for the Penguins that have to happen, to get to this point where we're even talking about like who's going to be the next head coach. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think people need to be more prepared for that conversation than probably a lot of Penguins fans realize, because 2 losing seasons, 2 missing playoff seasons is not something that the Penguins have done in a very long time. It's not something that a group like Fenway Sports Group bought the Penguins for. And so the fact that the majority of their seasons as the owners of this team have been missing the playoffs, I don't think that they're going to be able to sit around and do nothing and sit on their hands and just watch this team continue to miss the postseason. At some point, if nothing improves, eventually it's going to turn from the players and the personnel, and it's going to go to the coach. And I feel like people need to be prepared for that conversation if it does happen this season.
The other part of the conversation that I wanted to have today was going through the roster from last season and saying if we thought guys were going to be back or not. And of course, you're going to have actually retirement in there in Jeff Carter. Obviously, we know he won't be back, but obviously a ton of free agents, whether they're UFAs or RFAs, they're still going to play into that. Like, that should play into your mind in terms of whether you think they're going to be back or not. So, but one that we can check off right away, Alex Nedeljkovic coming back to the Penguins on a 2-year deal for $5 million. 2.5 per. Don't know how to feel about this, because the idea of bringing the Nedeljkovic back, we've talked about, if you're moving on from the other goaltender, the more expensive goaltender, and having the Nedeljkovic back in the fold, if you're going to move Tristan Jarry, certainly makes sense. Now, Nedeljkovic for $2.5 million, projected value $1.2 million. So realistically, probably should have gotten this over the course of the 2 years as opposed to 2.5 per. Posted a save percentage north of 900 in only 15 of his 33 starts this season with the Penguins, 7th worst among the 41 goalies with at least 30 starts. And his save percentage has only been above 900 in 50% of his starts over the last 3 years. Of the 40 goalies with at least 90 starts over that span, there are only 5 goalies that are worse. So completely fine as a backup goaltender, in my opinion. But at the same time, it's almost a double-edged sword, because if you're giving him $2.5 million for 2 years, I would like to not run it back with Tristan Jarry also in the fold. But I also don't think Nedeljkovic is capable of being the guy to carry the load for a team, as the numbers suggest that I just pointed out.
Yeah, I think that if you brought back Ned like they had, as far as I'm concerned, if I was the GM that extended this contract, the first thing I'm doing after this contract is signed is trying to move on from Tristan Jarry. Because let's be real, people. The real player that people need to be talking about when it comes to this goalie situation and what we would do for the future of this team is neither of the NHL goalies they have right now. It's Joel Blomqvist. And it is, what are you going to do to get him to the NHL level faster? And if you brought back Ned, the first thing you need to do is get Tristan Jarry out of here. You need to get Joel Blomqvist at the NHL level. And I wanted to add some context to this by reading a few tweets from our buddy Jesse Marshall, friend of the show. Go check him out on Twitter at JMarshFOF.
Is this the research you were doing?
No, this isn't the research I was doing.
Okay.
But I did want to bring up a few things that he said on Twitter. He said, Ned was fine, but fine is about the extent of it. He went on a good run for a fortnight. That's 2 weeks for those of you who don't know. At a crucial part of the year, while the other guy was out to lunch. And I think hindsight and it's revisiting that stretch run of form as being a little better than it actually was. Joel Blomqvist is ready for the NHL experience. Not sure I understand the need to re-sign Ned as a backup for 2 years unless you're dealing Jarry. It blockades a young guy who is likely to be better than the replacement level you're getting from an NHL time in non-injury situations. I agree with him 100%. I think Joel Blomqvist is the real goalie that needs to be had in this conversation. And when you look at what the Penguins are doing at the NHL level, bringing back Ned, you got to wonder if a Jarry trade is coming. Because if they really plan on keeping the goalie room the way it is right now, moving into just this, not just this season, but like, what if this is their future plan over the next 2 years and that is their actual succession, which actually gets into the research that I was doing before this. Because I was curious at the cost that the goaltending is at right now for the Penguins, which their goaltending is costing them, I believe it was like goalies, $7.875 million.
Yeah.
So at $7.875 million, I was curious where that ranks among the league. And so I went a little crazy and I was like, okay, let me look at like the last year's goaltenders. And I went through every single team and I accounted for goaltenders that appeared.
Before you do this,
yeah,
because this is going to take a while, I'm guessing.
It's not going to take a super long while.
Okay,
honestly, the research took way longer than this is going to take to say.
Okay, I have a thought that I don't want to forget about. I agree with the idea of getting Blomqvist's feet wet in the NHL next year, but I would have done that with Jarry still in tow as opposed to it being Nedeljkovic run as the running mate with him. Because, like I said, I think the numbers suggest that Nedeljkovic isn't capable of being the number one guy. And while the idea would hopefully be to have Blomqvist overtake him at some point this year and then certainly next year with Nedeljkovic then being the backup again, there's no guarantee of that happening. And it certainly wouldn't be early in the season. Like if you trade Tristan Jarry, Alex Nedeljkovic is your opening night starter in goal. Yeah. So
and I
would have rather have had a Jarry Blomqvist tandem as opposed to an Nedeljkovic Blomqvist tandem.
I agree with that 100%, but we're not going to get that now because the contract was signed.
Yeah, sure. That's why I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done it either. I would have rather have rolled the dice with Blomqvist as your potential backup going this year. Or if you wanted to sign a cheap backup that you could potentially replace with Blomqvist in the future, like I would be fine with that. Really, the Blomqvist is the catalyst to this whole goaltending conversation. But
before you do this, actually, Blomqvist, he'd be a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. There we go. So I just want, we're like 15 minutes in, so I love that. Yeah.
Also spur of the moment thing. But yeah, so I went on a little nutcase research for a little bit before we started recording. I was very curious if they roll into the season with, at worst case scenario, with this goalie tandem and potentially roll into next season too. I understand that that's probably unlikely, but technically by the books, they're both under contract for next season as well. Where does that goalie room rank as far as the actual cost per players and like what you're getting from them? And so I went team by team and I looked at last year, and I also accounted for people that have signed contracts this year. So if you have pretty much the same goalie room that you had in 23-24, but one of your goalies signed a contract, I accounted for that contract that they signed this offseason. So I went through every single team. I looked at every goalie on every team that played in at least 10 games, because I mean, you might have like one AHL guy that like gets in one game of the season, and I'm not going to really count that towards your goalie production at the NHL level. So I looked at, you had to play in at least 10 games, and I went team by team to find out what the average, I guess, payroll is for goalie rooms, and what the top 5 goalie rooms were, bottom 5 goalie rooms were. And do you think that the Penguins at 7.875, do you think they're below or above the NHL average?
Jeez. I don't think they're in the top 5. They're probably somewhere close to average. I'll say they're slightly above average.
That's not a bad guess. I mean, they are, I guess in the grand schemes of things, they are slightly above average. They're about $1 million above average. A little over $1 million. So it's the average in the NHL, as far as what I gathered last season, and like I said, in the contracts that have been signed so far, is 6.72 per team when it comes to all your goalie contracts. Now, there's definitely some teams that are floating that up, but there's also a few teams, and one in particular that really surprised me, that are really pulling that down as well. But so the Penguins are a little above average. So when you look at that, I don't think that this is a good situation to be in, because I don't think that you're going to be getting above average goaltending as far as payroll goes. I don't think that you should be paying this much for the goaltending that you're going to be getting from the Penguins. And I think that would be better spent, or that would have been better spent, by either bringing up Blomqvist now and seeing what he can do at the NHL level, because he's going to be on an AHL contract, or signing someone to like a rookie, or not a rookie, a league minimum contract to be or maybe like $1 million to be your backup. And that was not Ned, but that is gone. But yeah, so the Penguins at 7.875, they're about 1.125, I guess, $1 million above average. Top 5 in the NHL. You have the Flames at number 5, who average $9.01 million among their payroll for goaltenders. The Jets. Go ahead.
The Flames just traded Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah, I'm going back. I'm going based off of last year.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Yeah, based off last season. I only included new contracts if like your goalie room is pretty much the same.
Okay.
So this is last year's totals. The Flames were at 9.01. The Jets, including Hellebuck's new contract, are at 9.275. Lightning are at 10.275. The Islanders are at 11 million even, and the Panthers are at $11.1 million.
And yeah, those are
all of those teams have one guy that are inflating that, and they have then a cheap goaltender. Like the Panthers, they're at $11.1 million because Bob is taking up 10 of that $1 million. 10 of that 11.1. The Islanders, they signed, what was Sorokin's contract? I think it was near $9 million. So their other goaltender has like a $2.75 million contract. Like it's not that much more than what's Ned's getting, but we're talking about teams that have a goaltender that is at the top of the NHL level. And that's where I don't like this, and I'm not saying that they're at that. They're definitely not.
He's making Sorokin is 8.25. Not that it really matters, but
yeah. Also, bottom 5. Curiously enough, the Stars are at $5 million, so they get the goaltending they get for $5 million total. The Coyotes are at 4.7. The Oilers are at $3.36 million. So not bad goaltending, getting to the Western Conference or the Stanley Cup final, actually, with the goaltending that they have. The Kings are at $1.8 million. That is the lowest in the league.
And that changed as well because they just got Darcy Kemper.
Yeah. Last year, the Kings had $1.8 million on their goaltending payroll, which is absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
We're paying Ned more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that the Penguins have a problem with goaltender. So if I'm Dubas right now, you have to look up to move on from Jarry. I don't see another way that this makes sense.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Well, if we just brought up that, the first question I was going to ask you, if Nedeljkovic is back, is Tristan Jarry.
So I have to look at this.
What you want.
That's the thing. I have to look at this differently than what I would say, like I want. I genuinely believe that night one, both goaltenders are on the team.
Okay.
And that's going to be their goalie tandem moving forward, at least for this season. I genuinely think that maybe my opinion changes by the time we're getting into February and we're talking about trade deadline. But at the start of this season, I think that both of them are going to be there.
Okay. Also, this is the entire roster, so realistically, this could take like over an hour. So I don't want to get too in depth with this. We can just go yes or no.
Yeah.
For now, and we can go more in depth at a later time. Maybe have a little bit of this discussion with Josh next week, with the way that the roster looks right now. So, Noel Achari.
I mean, is he a UFA or RFA or anything?
No. He's got 2 years left.
$2 million
contract. Yeah,
I'd say probably. Like, do I think he deserves to be back? Not really, but at that number, I don't see them feeling the need to move on from him.
Yeah, I think he'll be back. Emil Bemstrom.
He's an RFA. Yep. I'll say yeah. I think he's back.
Okay. I don't think. I mean, he's not going to be a priority. I feel like it's kind of one of those things. It's like we're gonna try everything in our power to replace you, but like if you're just hanging around, you're still cheap. You're a little bit familiar with the system. Could come back. I'm going to say no though. I'll lean no. Michael Bunting, obvious, yes. Don't need to spend time on that one. Jeff Carter, like we said, moving on. Sidney Crosby, yeah, he'll be back, I think.
The more interesting question was, will he be back the year after that?
Yeah. When we do this when I'm 30 years old doing this podcast, it'll be fun to have that conversation. Lars Eller, we got an interesting one here. When they could go either way.
Yes. I think out of the free agent signings last year, I think he was the most productive one, which is surprising for what I thought the season was going to play out.
It's not saying very much, but yeah.
It's not saying much, but honestly, as far as a third-line center, and maybe this is a hot take, I think that he is the best third-line center they've had since Nick Bonino. And I think that if you can get him to play fourth-line center and find somebody to be consistent at third-line center, I think that makes the lineup even better. I do think that he played well enough for me to want him to come back, and he's probably one of the only people that were free agent signings last year that I can say that for. So I'll say yes, he's going to be back.
I guess in terms of sample size, you're probably right, but like Jared McCann was a 3C for them. Freddie Gaudreau was a 3C for them and probably better than Lars Eller, but it wasn't as many games as Lars Eller played.
It wasn't as many games.
They wouldn't let McCann play center.
And that's the thing. Where do they more consistently play those guys? Like, obviously, sample size, I'd take those guys over Lars Eller, especially right now. But when you look over an entire season, he probably had the best season at third line center that anybody has had since Bonino left.
Yeah. Jansen Harkins.
Pretty sad.
Please
no.
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, why would you?
Why exactly? Why would you?
Yeah. I don't even know. Does he have a contract next year? I'm not even sure if he does.
Harkins?
Yeah.
No, he's a UFA.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes it easy. Gino.
Yeah. I mean, what are we doing here?
Also,
hairline? Gino hairline?
Bald.
What's he think he is, Smitty?
It reminds me. I posted the video from the SpongeBob movie when he takes off his hat.
Yeah.
Bald or crown, I should say, not hat. Sorry, King. Don't want to disrespect you. Matt Nieto. I don't think that there's gonna have to be a decision on this one because I think he's gonna miss all of next year and be on IR anyway. So But that's the way they're making it sound.
He'll be back. He just won't be playing.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like that's what it sounds. I mean, what an awful injury that must have been for him to miss basically 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's going to be on IR of all of next year anyway. Drew O'Connor, I'm a yes.
Yes, 100%.
Jesse Puljujarvi.
He's under contract for next season, but do I think he should stay at the NHL level? That's another thing too. I think that some of these guys might be around, but they might not be at the NHL level. Like Emil Benstrom, he might be around next year, but I don't think he's going to be at the NHL level. Same thing with Jesse Puljujarvi. He might be around because he's under contract for $800,000, but $800,000, even if with an NHL contract, you can put that in the minors, no problem. So I don't think he's going to be an NHL regular next year. I don't know if that answers the question, but he might be back. But I don't think that he's going to be on the NHL team.
That's fair. Yeah, they're going to want guys like that in the AHL, the guys that can play in the NHL, like veterans at the AHL level, I'm sure. So that makes sense. I'll say yes for that reason. Rickard Rakell.
Oh, this is a tough one. I think that he will be. And that's tough for me to not to say, but like it's tough for me to think about Rickard Rakell in this light because you saw the flashes later in the season last year.
Imagine asking yourself this before last year.
You saw the flashes of what he could be with this team, but last year was such a downturn. But I do think that to close out the season, he played better than he did for the majority of the season. I still think in my gut that he's going to be around, but I don't think that it's as slam dunk as I would like it to be. And obviously, like with the contract, if we can get cap space and improve in other areas, then that would be a completely different conversation. But I think that Rickard Rakell will be around. I think that Dubas likes him enough and will want to see if he can have a bounce back here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. The only caveat that I would add, I mean, if they get somebody, I don't know, like a Patrick Laine or Steven Stamkos,
it's interesting seeing that one being floating around, like Laine to the Penguins.
Yeah, I think that would make a Rakell trade much more plausible. So I'll say yes for the time being, though. Brian Rust is a yes for me.
Yeah.
Riley Smith is a no.
I mean, I don't even think with Rust the Penguins would have to ask for permission.
Right. Yeah. So how, yeah, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see, like, is missing the playoffs back-to-back years enough for Brian Rust to want out of Pittsburgh? I don't know. Riley Smith, I do not think will be back.
No, I don't think he'll be back.
And he's not a free agent. Like, they're going to have to trade him, but I do think that happens.
No, if you missed my hashtag sources last week, his wife told somebody. his wife told the person that told my source that he doesn't want to be in Pittsburgh.
Radim Zohorna.
He kind of fits in that mold where like he could be back, but not at the NHL level. Like I don't think I feel like you look at what they did last year with the bottom six, and they didn't improve it enough. They just kind of got a lot of guys that didn't do a lot. And I'm not saying Zohorna is exactly like that, but I feel like Zohorna, if they do bring him back, is probably going to be one of those guys that is mainly an NHL player. He's like in baseball terms, he's like a quad A player. Like he is decent down in the AHL, but is he someone that you necessarily want to be an everyday guy in your starting lineup? I don't think so. And so actually, as of right now, I'll probably say no. I don't think Zohorna will be back because he is a UFA. And I think the only reason he would be back is to be one of those like quad A type of players to have experience down in the AHL, but I'll say no.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for the forwards. Then Ryan Graves is going to be back. Of course,
there's no way they can get rid of him. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, so I don't even think that's worth having much of a conversation about, although we would like to be able to get rid of him. P.O. Joseph.
This one is interesting to me. I feel like he's probably the most movable defenseman if you wanted to make space in your defense. And he's also an RFA, so you'd be trading the rights to POJ. You wouldn't actually be trading a contract. What was the defensive pairings to close out the season?
Ooh, I don't know, because you had St. Ivany up at that
St. Ivany and was it Ludwig together?
Yeah, I mean Graves didn't finish the year; he was hurt. So
you expect So you expect Letang and Pettersson to, or not Letang, or did they have Letang with Pettersson?
I think that they're going to try to run back the Letang and Graves thing.
Okay,
I think you have Pettersson.
So you have Letang and Graves, and then you have Pettersson and Carlson, and then you have St. Ivany and
POJ.
I mean, I guess he'll be back because I have a hard time envisioning them trading him as an RFA. So I guess he would get a qualifying offer and come back. Like POJ is still only 24 years old, which is nuts to me.
Yeah. I don't know. They did just acquire another defenseman, didn't they? Philip Kral from somewhere like that has the Dubas ties. He was drafted by him in Toronto.
Yeah,
like,
well, last name sucks. I don't want him.
I just wonder, but I wonder if that was a move made with the idea that POJ wouldn't be back, or somebody within that bottom four wouldn't be back. Like, so I don't know. I'm gonna say yes, but I'm not very confident about it.
Oh wait, it was St. Ivany and Ryan Shea, wasn't it?
Well, it could have been. I forgot about Ryan Shea as well. I don't know how they finished out.
I think it was Ivany and Ryan Shea. I'll say yeah, but just because he's an RFA, and I think it's easier to just give him a qualifying offer than to trade him as an RFA. But man, he's a tough
Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
Chris Letang.
Yep.
John Ludwig.
I mean, yeah, that's a guy that's just going to be playing in the AHL probably. So,
yeah, decent depth, like 8th, 9th defenseman, I guess. St. Ivany, I think, showed enough last year to be like your 6th or 7th. Like he's either on the bottom.
St. Ivany, I think, should be in the NHL starting next season.
In this one, I hope so. Marcus Pettersson. Like, I would like to think so. Is there a chance that he's traded though?
I don't think. Is there a chance? I mean, there's always a chance. That's a terrible answer, but it's true. But I don't think I could seriously look at the Penguins defense and say with a serious face that they are good enough to get back to the postseason if Marcus Pettersson is gone. I don't care who you put in there. Currently,
tells you they're not trying to go all in.
If they trade Marcus Pettersson, they are tanking. And that may be a little extreme of a word to use, but they didn't improve whatsoever.
Maybe not trying to, but they would be.
Yeah, they would be. They effectively would be. Because if you were doing that and you're not bringing in some sort of free agent / trade that you think could improve your defense overall more than Marcus Pettersson, I would disagree with you. But if you're thinking you're doing that and you're just looking at who you have in the Penguins organization and you move on from Marcus Pettersson, there is no way you could take yourself seriously on defense. I don't care how many points Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang could score. Defensively, that team would be a nightmare. And so I don't think that they could do that seriously. I don't think it would be a responsible thing to do if you're trying to actually get back to the postseason. So could it happen? Yeah. But in my heart of hearts, I really disagree with that decision. If that were to happen, I'm going to say he's back.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as we're going through there, I don't see a lot of spots like opening up. Like Riley Smith would be one, probably maybe 1 or 2 in the bottom 6, but like none on defense. We didn't open up a single hole for them to improve on defense. And we're talking about maybe Tristan Jarry, if he's moved, they're going to open up for an internal option to be moved up in Yoel Blomqvist. So, how much better is this team going to get this offseason? I think that they have a lot of work to do, but are they going to going through? It's just kind of hard to see them moving on from a ton of these guys.
I think that's fair. And I think that you probably look at like their lines last year. So to close out the season last year, they had Chris Letang, POJ, Marcus Pettersson, Erik Karlsson, and Ryan Shea, Jack St. Ivany. I think that if you're including Ryan Graves in that group as well, those could be your like 6 to 7 defensemen that you're rolling with at the NHL level. And I don't think that they needed to improve a ton defensively. Like, yeah, like you could sub out a guy for somebody else. I mean, obviously, like Ryan Graves, if anybody can move on from
Right.
him,
The
go ahead
guy
and
that
do
they
that.
can't
But like
move.
the realistic options, I don't think that they needed to really do anything defensively. But when you look at the forward group, like some of the people we named, the top six isn't going to go anywhere. I said Lars Eller should stay, but then you look at Jansen Harkins, Jeff Carter, Jesse Puljujarvi. They started the last game of the season. That bottom line should be completely open for spots to be had. Riley Smith on the third line, I think that he's going to be an open spot. And then Valtteri Puustinen was one that was. He's
already.
He
already got brought back.
He got brought back. He's somebody that could be at the NHL level next year. But we'll see if he becomes a regular timer up there, or if they try to bring in somebody else. So like, there's potentially 4 to 5 spots in the forward group that could be up for grabs. I'm
not going to say he should be guaranteed a spot, but if you're bringing him back, like I don't know, I think he's got to be an NHL regular next year. Otherwise, they might as well have cut bait. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there.
I mean, the real question to me is, where does Jake Gensel come back to play? I'm just kidding.
Did you see the projection on his contract?
No, I didn't actually.
7 years, 9.3 per.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting if he was going to sign with the Penguins that it would be like somewhere like 8.5 to 9. So
I mean,
9.3.
That's good for him. I mean, he deserves that, if not more. 9.3.
It's not going to be in Carolina. So Carolina literally traded for a rental to not win the cup. And so I think you can officially say, even without the Penguins seeing any of those guys play or making a pick, I think the Penguins won.
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, based off the feelings immediately after the trade, if they don't re-sign Jake Gensel, Michael Bunting alone would have been a win for the Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that they get from any of those prospects on top would just be icing on the cake for me, because I
agree.
I love Michael Bunting. I think what he brings to this team is exactly what, not to say that he is Jake Gensel. He's not a superstar player, but he is a much needed player on any team, and he brings an element that the Penguins have not had.
The tone of conversation that happened when we traded for Michael Bunting to just a couple weeks later and throughout the remainder of the last season we just had, it was just like basically us talking about how much we love Michael Bunting week after week.
It was basically us old takes exposing ourselves.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's accurate. But I think when you look at the team, there's at least 4 spots that I think will be up for grabs this upcoming season. Defense seems pretty locked up, and then you got to figure out the goaltending situation. I personally think they're going to roll with the 2 goalies that they have right now.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't. I think they're going to move Jarry. I don't know how. I think Dubas can say everything that he wants. We know how GMs talk. We know that,
absolutely,
actions speak louder than words. As much as they want to say that there's full confidence in Tristan Jarry, there can't be. It just doesn't. Like, you don't have a guy that you believe is your number 1 goaltender, not only now but for the future, on that contract, and him not play down the stretch in the way that he didn't play. Like, it's not even like Nedeljkovic was lighting it up at that point either. You could see that Nedeljkovic was starting to fade with how many games he was having to play, and they still just kept rolling with him. They didn't have the trust to go back to Tristan Jarry when you're fighting for a playoff spot. Like, I think if that was the most telling to me, I felt like that same situation with them not having the faith to turn back to him was the Steelers not having faith to turn back to Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point.
Look how that turned out. So I feel like it's kind of deja vu to the Steelers situation.
So Yoel Bloomquist is our Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
or Justin Fields, depending on how you look at it.
It's going to be they're going to trade for Jake Ottinger. Actually,
I would love
that's my
that.
dream. That's
would-
my dream.
I would love
The
that.
Stars, fresh off their Western Conference Finals appearance, are trading their second best player.
Hey, I mean, hockey trade, Ottinger for Jarry, just straight up. I think they could do it.
Oh man. Anyways, yeah, that's about it. Be sure to go grab yourself some merch. By the time it's hockey season, maybe the hoodies and long sleeves will be useful for you. We came out with a few new designs this past weekend. You can get them in different colors: black, gray, white. You can get them in this t-shirt, long sleeve, or a hoodie. The link directly to those will be in the description of this show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening somewhere else. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell down below. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on what we talked about. We want your opinions on everything that we talked about as well. Even if you want to literally take the time and go through a full list of the roster that we just did and say yes or no to them coming back, be sure to do that. Yes?
The one question I want people to answer in the comments: will Tristan Jarry be on the Penguins opening night of the roster?
We can even run a poll.
I want to see what people think. I think yes. Smitty thinks no. What do you guys think?
There we go. So yeah, like I said, grab yourself some merch as well from Everything Custom Design. Speaking of them, Smitty, tell them about them. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. Link, like I said, will be in the description of the show, whether you're watching or listening. If you're watching, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments. If you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you're subscribed over there, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Search around the 412. You can find us there. Be sure to follow us everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Like us on Facebook, all that good stuff. If you're not into the full podcast form, be sure that you are following us on TikTok. We put out clips of about 90 seconds semi-regularly. I'm trying to get back on my grind with doing that. Same thing with the IG Reels and the YouTube Shorts and this short-form content, because I know that's how a lot of people like to consume their content these days. But anyways, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the Four Penguins show, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.